right, welcome to the Data Center Financial Services event. Today we will be discussing the latest trends in AI ML in the fintech industry. My name is Ragini. I will be your host today. I am from JP Chase, and I am a executive director and product lead in the infrastructure data space. So welcome to everyone. I see a lot of friendly faces. I think today, maybe before we kick it off with views and what's going on in the fintech industry, we should just go around the table, introduce ourselves. Roberto, would you like to go first?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. It's 8 p.m. in New York City, so I'm saying good evening. And my name is Roberto Strepparava. I am Vice President Quantitative Research, and I'm very excited to have joined this conversation tonight.
Thank you. Adriano, would you like to go next?
Yeah, hello, good evening. For me, it's 9 p.m., so I'm talking from São Paulo, Brazil, so I'm a bit later than you guys. I am currently the Chief Data Officer of AXA Brazil's hub, responsible for the Brazilian data team here for our insurance company. And I'm very happy to be here, trying to put some perspective on the mainly in Brazil, but also some points in Latin America.
Jeremy?
Hey, glad to be here. Nice to meet you all. I'm Jeremy Ernst. I'm a principal AI engineer at Ally Bank. I focus mainly in the conversational AI space and work on our chatbot platform. Coming to you from Charlotte on the East Coast, so same time, but it's a little clearer down here, thankfully. It rained all this morning.
That's good. Venkat.
Hi, I'm Venkat Krishnamoorthy. I'm the group CTO at Hamilton Insurance Group, based in the New Jersey area, so it's definitely raining here. I'm pretty interested to hear different perspectives. I've worked in different industries. Currently, I'm in the insurance space, but previously I used to be in the financial space doing primary broker research and primary research using data. So it's come to a more grander scale now. So definitely interested in participating in this conversation.
And Amrutha.
Hey, hello, Ragini. Hi, everyone. So this is Amrutha, and I'm joining in from the East Coast as well. So it's 8 p.m. here. So I'm the head of data management solutions at Vanguard. And prior to joining Vanguard, I've had a mix of industry and consulting experience. I've worked with Deloitte, JP Morgan, and Goldman Sachs at risk, regulatory, data management, or data governance, cloud modernization projects and initiatives in the past. So I'm really excited to be a part of this panel. I'm really here to learn from everyone and build relationships and expand my network. So thank you.
Welcome to everybody. And I think it's really good to hear that we all are in such similar speaks. And thank you to Data Standard for bringing us together, I would say. Why don't we just kick it off? And since we're going to be talking about different aspects of AI ML use cases in the fintech industry, I'll just give you my personal views on what I've read and understood and researched over the past years. In general, I think that the fintech industry is a little bit ahead in AI ML. And the reason for that is data. That backdrop of all the AI ML use cases is the fact that fintech has been investing heavily in big data initiatives. So that foundation having been laid, the ability to do AI ML and to do research and to be able to take it further into production has improved. And statistically speaking, from various blogs and research articles, it seems 55% of the use cases that are now being marketed are actually moving to production. So that's a big leap if you consider what has been going on in the industry in the past couple of years. Also, a couple of trends that we notice across fintech is you would expect it's about financial instruments, but really the heavy investments have been in process automation and reducing costs. Another important aspect has been customer insights and customer experience. So collecting the telemetry and all that data being available through our big data platforms, building out those analytics and seeing, how can we delight the customer. and how can we make sure that our products are marketable and accepted, and how to see that, that's making an impact on the market. That's been another high focus area. And third is obviously the fraud detection aspect of it, and curating, who to lend money and what should be the expected credit bandwidth for the person is also changing over a period of time. So everyone is familiar with the credit score, and credit score is so, I would say it's a little bit dated in the way we do credit scoring per person, but imagine what the data and the profiling of users does, and how curated and further it can take our use cases. So based on that, in general, the industry and the market also, just outside of fintech, the technology areas have made the customer want a quick response time, and they want more personalization. That's what technology has done. Everybody's on their phone all the time, and when someone tweets something, you get the message right away. You're on Snapchat, you get it right away. That's exactly what they're expecting out of all the products that are coming out of the fintech industry. Also, in the past year during COVID, it seems that there has been a rise in the number of credit cards that have been sold out. It's been over 20 million as opposed to the previous years. So if that's the case, you can imagine what's happening. There's like online banking that's going on, the QR code scanning, there is online payment systems. So this does, just by correlation, increase the number of fraudulent activities as well. So just to throw out some numbers, and then I'll open the floor for some feedback and debate. Last year alone, 55% of the business worldwide reported fraud, and 60% of them said that they saw higher activity during COVID because, there was more online presence for customers in general. So with that, I'll open it up. Maybe if each of you can talk about your personal experiences or where the industry is in terms of its AI/ML use case and trends, that'd be great.
Sure, I can. Thank you for this introduction. I can go first. Quantitative research has pushed extensively in the last 4 years towards AI. So, for example, and I particularly appreciate your comment about moving to productions, because, for example, months ago, we went to prod with the first firm-wide deep learning model for pricing corporate bonds. We called it Deep Bond. So the trend which has been set is to keep on pushing towards more and more machine learning in our job. And of course, this involves also office automation, which is a big component of what I do, for example, in my particular field, which is municipal bond. So definitely there is a trend, and this trend is fast pacing towards moving to production, because it's easy to make a prototype, but productionization is really requires a lot of scalability and non-trivial problems to solve.
Jeremy, would you like to share some insights on that?
Yeah. So actually, it's interesting. In my previous role, I worked in fraud prevention in ML, and now I'm in customer experience for ML, which I kind of see as two sides of the same coin. In the end, we want to do right by our customers by providing them experiences to work faster and, save time. Like that's our most valuable resource. So always looking for ways to save time, but we're always introducing new attack vectors. And the fraud space, bad actors don't have regulators that, they need to work with, and processes of how do I bring this to production. They're just going to hammer away. So it's really interesting seeing the contrast in that space. And to the note on, productionalizing things, I think for a long time, the number was like, maybe 20% of the projects that people work on actually make it out the door when it comes to ML. And we're seeing that increase a lot more. The numbers you shared are awesome to see. But it's also really exciting, kind of the proliferation of additional industries that it's bringing along. So we are introducing like ML ops, ethics and governance are becoming a lot more important as we bring these things to production and people see their impacts. So it's cool seeing all of, a lot of new companies coming out in novel ways of, for a long time, a deep learning model was a black box, but now we're focusing on explainability and actually how can we point and explain, the weights and biases of every actual input if we wanted to, because you always have to have that audit trail. So I'm really excited where the industry is going. Happy, glad to be here talking with you all about it and that we have such great minds trying to drive towards the good. But again, we also have a lot of very smart minds towards the bad. So it's important for us to work together and have these sort of open conversations to stay ahead of the curve.
Thank you. Anyone else want to talk about how their company is progressing with the IML trends?
Yeah, I can talk about opportunities. I mean, I work in the insurance industry right now, but I used to work in the finance industry collecting company data. I used to work for data collection companies like Reuters, Thomson Reuters, for a long time. I think the trend you're seeing is really, for insurance in particular, is automation more than the data right now. Where, if you look at, we talked about trends in the industry, how personalization, customer insight are important. But if you look at, in a certain insurance class of business or companies, even the financial sector, there's a lot more B2B, which demands B2B business, like, for example, investment banking or specialty insurance, the markets I work in right now. So a lot of the business comes through, B2B, right? So process automation, extracting information, linking that to internal and external data is really the trend, and how to automate that. A lot of that is done manually. How to automate that's the first step. I think pricing is a complicated discussion when it comes to insurance, but definitely, there is a lot of opportunity in claims processing to incoming business intake, and how fast you can respond to that. Is really a huge opportunity. I'm talking like huge opportunity, like billions of dollars in opportunity. And insurance industry in general has lagged in the adoption of technology. So I really think there is a possibility for like a leap forward, right? New technology. I mean, there's a discussion about how we could potentially adopt things faster, and how more and more projects are becoming successful in AI. I think a lot of the new tools and techniques, like 5 years ago, how you built a model and how you could basically build a simple model for data classification is much, much simpler. So the cost of entry to adopting these tools, even in process automation, information extraction, data classification, and linking information, there's plenty of opportunity, and these are things I would say insurance industry in general is working on, and we are on that too.
It feels like the biggest difficulty is in now choosing from all of those tools, because there are so many that are so good now.
I agree with that.
Absolutely. It's become literally at your fingertips, using whatever package, TensorFlow or sklearn. It's become very easy to prototype good machine learning models. Still, I see it's non-trivial to move to prod. The scalability issues are big, but it's become very easy to prototype. Very easy.
Totally agree with that. Amrutha or Adriano, did you want to share any thoughts on this?
No, sure, Ragini. So I was just thinking through this, and based on my experience, right, the rate at which innovation is happening today kind of almost obligates, mandates every company to baseline their maturity assessment periodically, because that's how fast things are happening, and we kind of have to reconvene on this pretty much periodically to see where we are at in our journey on the AI capabilities and ML space. So I would definitely say that right now we are quite mature in this journey, especially in AI adoption and ML capability space. So we have fully established data science and AI teams that are enabling both enterprise and federated use cases So we're looking to enable all kinds of prescriptive and predictive analytics and to modernize our solutions and platforms, and including web applications or websites to really track client activity and accordingly kind of really enhance our client digital experience and engagement aspect of it. So, yep.
Yeah, I think that real-time feedback is also very rewarding for the product teams. When we instantly release a feature and you're able to see the telemetry and you're able to interpret whether that action was good, like 2 clicks, 1 click, that's very valuable feedback, and it feels good to see things move faster into real production, real customers. Absolutely.
So true. And you're able to proactively kind of get customer sentiment as you're deploying your product, so you can repurpose your product before you actually deploy it in the market. So yeah, we are looking at all of those angles as well. Yep.
So okay, let's move to another section. Let's just talk about like AI ML engineering. So maybe I'll ask Jeremy, what do you think from your perspective are some of the most exciting areas in the fintech sector?
Yeah, so we kind of already touched on them a bit. Coincidentally, they happen to be customer experience and fraud prevention. So for one, time, like I said, is first and foremost. I also love math, and there's a lot of complicated quantitative problems, especially really in the ML space, as everything boils down to quantitative application, which is what I love about it. But especially in fraud prevention, as activity, especially, when we're talking about the increase in digital activity, think about all of those touch points and all those new data points are just increasing. So it's really exciting, at Ally, the work that we're doing for the customer to improve the experience around, right now we're working on this chatbot platform. We are also doing a lot of work internally with RPA and how do we free up people's time for working on more complex things internally and externally. Everyone's a customer in a different dimension. But with that, also comes considerations. If I'm to introduce this new tool or this way of working, what is the downside of that, or the pros and cons. So when it comes to customer experience, typically, like I was mentioning before, new attack vectors are introduced, and definitely internally we are ramping up a lot of efforts around ML applications for fraud. But then when it comes to RPA, there's I think a lot to learn and share with people that maybe aren't as familiar with some of the processes and, kind of worried about automation. And so kind of level setting with people, kind of the processes that we're driving towards, and sharing skills and having open discussions so everyone can work towards the same goal and elevate their skill set.
That's fantastic. Maybe we talk a little bit about cloud. Venkat, how do you think that cloud and data has been impacting digital transformation in the fintech industry?
Yeah, sure. I think I would just give a highlight, which is, the cloud and data technology is really enabling transformation at a faster pace than anything which we have seen before. And I'll give you some examples of that and why that is. The first is really, if you look at a historical, like any kind of IT or technology data project, a lot of resources, it takes a lot of time to kind of build things. What the cloud is enabling is really composition, right? You don't have to build everything. You basically can compose different solutions in the cloud and enable a different level of velocity of delivery and confidence. So that we talked about machine learning and different examples, but even if you look at basic things, there are a lot of building blocks and APIs by which you can bring different things together and compose a new solution. Right? So a good example of that is if you take property data, right? There's a lot of vendors which collect very important information and very dynamic information. Let's take ESG and climate risk. The amount of data collection coming out of that is much more rapid than anything we can do. But we can then take that data and then use that for pricing, for risk analysis purposes, The composition is what data, cloud is enabling. The other aspect, which I think is important here, is security. An average firm, I would say, I mean, a bank, I'm sure will go higher, but average firm faces 30 to 40 cyber events every day, or cyber incidents, rather. And the challenge there is some of it, and it's being done at a very industrial scale. There is a real need for essentially adopting cloud and bringing the modern cybersecurity practices to our own. You cannot do that organically, right? So other aspects I would highlight are compliance. There is a huge amount of regulation. You really cannot keep up with until you adopt this composition technique I was talking about, where you can compose compliance solutions by adopting some of these technology faster instead of organically doing it. The last point I would point out is really innovation. There is, I used to work in industry, I collected a lot of data, but the scale of data we are talking about now is much higher. Like, for example, you take primary research, which is really a cornerstone in investing. So you can get a wide variety of textual data that you never had access to. So that aspect is coming in. And there's other things I could point out as through the conversation. Natural language processing, how do we do knowledge management and start, all these things like this. And composition can be used to bring this innovation as well as to adoption of sovereign data.
Yeah, thank you, Venkat. Yeah, I do notice that with cloud being there, the ability for you to run your production workload it's faster. Just that turnaround time, otherwise you're going to order equipment and have large-scale machines with high computing power, and by the time you get there and you're running it, then the big data technology moves on. So now you're trying to refresh that technology, and you're in this iterative cycle. With cloud now, you can use containers, you can run workloads, you can pay for what what you're using, and that just makes it faster and easier for us to kind of get there. Run through your pilot and go to production. Yeah.
You focus on problem solving rather than infrastructure.
Exactly.
Different mindset, different types of talent you attract. So I think that is the delivery velocity, I would say, is really the cornerstone. And people look at cloud, it's a little bit expensive than running a data center. If you look at what people don't really appreciate is the total cost of ownership, and what it takes to actually solve a business problem is much expensive. If you look at bits and bytes rather than look at it holistically, what does it cost to solve the problem and what benefit did I get out of it, right? So I would say that is a very important aspect people should look at when they consider transformations.
All right, thank you.
And how we balance that with risk, I think, especially in the financial services industry, is interesting, because every company, has their own journey. We see, data breaches all the time on big cloud providers, and I think that has impacts on different companies. And I think the production path and the journey that people have to the cloud varies a lot across the financial services industry. In insurance specifically, interested in the additional compliance that comes with that. So speaking to, again, we work with the regulators and have we have to adhere to compliance. So that's always in the forefront.
Yeah, I agree. And since you were talking about the impact of business, Amrutha, from your experience, how do you feel about the speed, scale, and the accuracy of data has changed over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question. And I think for us in order to understand how that's evolved over time, it's important to understand what drove the uptick. For data delivery capability and serviceability, and more so from a consumption standpoint, was there an appetite in the market that actually drove this uptick Was there an appetite to consume this data and also meet the deployment frequency at the same time? So I think the onset of big data analytics, I think a lot of things that we just spoke about, cloud modernization, digital transformation, the onset of disruptors in the fintech area, the client preferences has evolved over a period of time as we have newer generations of investors playing a role, and we have new avenues of investments today. So I think that has really given way and more options for clients to really invest and in a diverse set of portfolios. So all of these factors, I think, put together has really kind of impacted and has influenced the demand for a faster, more robust and scalable architecture ecosystem for data delivery and consumption today. So I would definitely say cloud modernization has really been a game changer, especially the fact that the storage has been made as cheap as ever before. The ability to decouple storage from compute has really improved the performance and the deployment of our data products on cloud infrastructure. I think a lot of our AI/ML models actually require huge sets of unstructured and structured data to regression test the models, so that we get really close to the outputs. And it's not just volume, but the variety of sample size that we need to use is also very important for the models. So I think the scalability of what the cloud architecture can provide is also really enhanced, the accuracy aspect of it. And with data streaming capabilities and microservices-based architecture has really blurred the lines between analytical and operational reporting. So today, a lot of our analytical decision-making can be made on near real-time data made available, or latest and greatest information, because that's what the architecture has really made it available today. So I think a lot of common data management principles can be applied, and we can provide one ecosystem for analytical and operational use cases today. Similarly, on the accuracy side as well, we have provided a lot of emphasis to really build trustworthy and reliable data products, because meeting time to market and time to insights has always been emphasized, and absolutely I think that's important. But if you don't give emphasis on accuracy and data quality, it's almost like you're delivering a car without any brakes or no windshield. So you know that you're going to crash at some point. So, making sure that there is enough emphasis on accuracy and governance. And we also make sure that governance is at every stage of data product development and deployment. It's not just, looked at the testing phase or at the deployment phase. I think that's what cloud has enabled as well today, that the flexibility to work with open source systems or third-party vendor tools, the accuracy and the emphasis on the interoperability aspect of it has really enhanced the experience, I guess.
Yeah, I think I've read a lot of blogs where they talk about using supervised learning to train these data sets to make sure that your incomplete data can be auto-completed. At least it improves the quality to a certain level that it becomes usable for your training models. So
I totally agree. Sorry for the interruption, but that is something that I see literally on a daily basis. The dichotomy between supervised learning, where you have labels and features, and unsupervised learning. From my personal experience, which is shared also by many of my team members, usually in finance, if you encounter an unsupervised learning problem, it's because your data set is not yet complete. You have to add more data. I would say that the typical finance problem is a supervised learning problem, where you have labels like prices or spreads or yields and a bunch of features. And having said that, sometimes you do have some clustering problems, but I think the step number one is look at your data and make sure that it's complete as possible in order to cast it into a simpler problem. And also the mathematics becomes much simpler if you reduce your problem to a supervised learning problem.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, with that, let's step into the future of AI and ML. Adriano, from your perspective in LATAM, what do you think? What kind of innovation should the consumers be expecting as a result of these AI initiatives?
Well, you mentioned before here that we focused before on for example, we start with fraud analysis, and then we move to, because there was we want to tackle the efficiency, so we start with that. We knew there was money there. Then we moved to customer experience, because this is what is important today, is how you manage that. And now mainly with the discussions that we have on both open insurance and open banking. So this open finance idea that you just put all your data to everybody to consume. For the future, we need to look at 2 points. First, the governance and data privacy, how we manage all this information from the customers and what we are going to do. But mainly, I think all the models will go towards the customer behavior, because now you are going to kind of share the information. Will not be only for one bank or one insurance company that has the whole historical data. You have the information in let's say a set of a pool here, and the customer will go to the insurance company or the bank that it's more fits more to their expectations. So how you model this kind of behavior, and I think this is mainly the focus will be going that direction, because we will start to do things different. So it's not just about putting the lower price. When you talk about insurance, for example, you have to look at the whole experience and see what this kind of customer wants, and why he or she different than the other customer. And so let's put this on the table and provide the best solution for each of the customers. So I think we have to move on this behavior analysis on ML.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. And we often talk about it on our internal circles about, the impatience of the customer, because everything is so fast, even food and Amazon delivery, things like that. You can order stuff and it'll be there next day. Like, that was not something we thought about a couple of years ago. So given that, they want instant data, and, there's a little bit of spinning going on in the website, and it's like, what's going on? Why is this not responsive? So yes, I see that trend is definitely going to pick up in general. And Roberto, from your point of view, what do you think is the next big thing in AI? And I think specifically, if you want to talk about maybe NLP.
Sure, that's a great question, because I think, well, there are many exciting things going on at the same time in AI. But if I have to bet, NLP, natural language processing, is the next big thing, for basically one big reason, because of what I call the power of the narrative. We swim literally in an ocean of unstructured data, which is represented by fiat news, newspapers, television, tweets, posts, podcasts, everything. And this ocean of unstructured data actually shapes society, not just the financial markets. But if you want an example from financial markets, look at what the traders call the meme stocks, like GameStop, but also Tesla. Look at its 620 billion market cap. Tesla is mostly shaped by the narrative. So it becomes of paramount importance if you want to capture this ocean of unstructured data, to have the tools to do that. And natural language processing, which is still, it's made tremendous progress, but it's still in its infancy, is the one which can give you the key to the golden door. I don't know how to say it differently. Starting from something that we do internally, like, for example, sentiment analysis, something that processes news and gives you a signal, buy, hold, or sell. But this is the simplest. There are other techniques. I know, for example, that there's some software available that gives you a pictorial representation with gravitational pull represented as centers of aggregation given by particular news, which is amazing in both qualitative and also quantitative analysis if you want to capture a signal. The power of NLP, I really believe, and of course JP Morgan has its own team dedicated to natural language processing. There, as I said at the beginning, there are many exciting things going on at the same time, but definitely for AI, NLP is at the forefront, I would say.
Yeah, I think it does make it easier for the customer, so to say, to translate things, especially financial terms. I know we say natural language, but it's really not natural to a lot of people who are not in that context, right? So sometimes you have to build your own dictionary to kind of say, what is this NLP search going to look like, even when we do this internally. Okay, with that, I just want to touch on simply, I think a lot of us have been in different spaces in the AI ML, but product managing an AI ML product can have its ups and downs, and I personally find that it's slightly different from traditional product management. And what I mean by that is it's much harder to assign a feature to a journey, because very often when you're playing around with the model and you see some success there and you're like, okay, let me market this even before we've mapped out exactly what the customer is going to do. And that's the speed at which the industry is moving. So sometimes unexpected things, something that you would not really see a customer want, you might think of it and you might predict it and you might want to have a model around it, and then you would want to put it in production quickly. So that kind of breaks the traditional model where you want to do some market research and you want to get some gravity before you start selling it. And the reason why I brought this up is I've seen lately another trend, which is not directly fintech, but other technology companies that sell solutions to fintech companies for, let's say, fraud detection, since we've talked about that a few times, right? And recently I read that Facebook took like a 10% stake in this company called Geo. And basically what that does is it connects customers to the online and physical stores. And so it's really just a leap, even tech companies kind of playing in this space. So do you have any views on this, and like basically how have you been managing your product lifecycle? Jeremy, do you want to opine on that?
Yeah, sure. So I agree. I think it is extremely different. Really all the roles and just the way we develop as an AI team is starkly different than your typical software shop. So I think, like you had mentioned, normally you do, I think waterfall is the process where we would do a lot of research beforehand, and now it's about how do we get an MVP in front of a group of people as soon as possible, A/B testing and all of these things to get immediate and continuous feedback. But the caveat to that is there is risk introduced with that, reputational risk with the people that you're in working with, internal risk, based on what you can report and some of your success metrics. So it's just, I think it's very important to start outlining that risk framework, understand what your appetite is, build a framework for continuously evaluating that, a framework for being able to continuously report to internal and external stakeholders. I think that's something that we lack just in the industry as a whole, is still all the development is going on internally, and like a customer is not going to build their own bot. But I think it is important and would probably make a customer feel more comfortable if you exposed kind of your development journey and even your shortcomings to them throughout the process as you're rolling out a product. Humility goes a long way and makes people feel more comfortable. So I think it's a very interesting and exciting space, always kept on our toes. And glad that we have a great team internally we've been building out to try and evolve and iterate on those frameworks.
Yeah, it's good to hear. I mean, I think another aspect of the product management being the definition of done. I often I think that it conflicts with our use cases in the sense that the sample size that you use for the definition of done when you create something and you put it in a development or a pilot mode versus what the production data actually looks like can drastically change what your outcome is. And having that baked in your definition of done and anticipating that it's going to be a couple iterations before you're going to get it right, and you're going to put a model in production and then see an output which looks a little bit different than what you expected when you were in, or what you saw when it was in pilot. And a couple other terms I hear it floating. Sorry, you were trying to say something, Jeremy. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, I was just saying, yes, iterative milestones versus we're complete with something by this date. A very different way to set expectations.
Yeah. And a couple others said, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, one of the trends, the good points about building models and how the development process of that is different, challenges faced. I think there is also, when we talk about AI adoption in the industry, the thing I want to point out is new emerging. So if you look at, talent in general, you hire, like, let's say, the best machine learning engineers possible, they don't fully understand the business domain. So I think there is really an opportunity here, and you see a lot of vendors kind of moving in this space, is really come up with, the right balance of tools, like almost a fusion development model between business and technology, where both sides really kind of partner in evolving their understanding in real time. So I think fusion development, local AI-based tools that people talk about, robotic process automation being one, introduce AI to the process. How do you get your business person to also participate in the model design? I mean, that's I think is an emerging area which will kind of look at solving certain problems, right? It may not solve the more complex deep learning machine model, but the simpler, where we can adopt and infuse AI into business processes. I really think there's a big opportunity for transformation and acceleration of adoption of AI in the main work streams of business.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Another thing that I find is often a thing we iterate over is model drift. You might initially put something in production and that's working fine, like recommending this particular credit card works for you, and then over a period of time there's other factors that you would want to add to your algorithm to make that truly curated. So there's more iteration even after you put it in production. As the data keeps changing and the profiling you do changes, model drift has to be addressed. And I think as a product manager you have to keep sight of that feature is not once and done. It's always going to be evolving as the landscape changes. And how about we just talk a little bit about the challenges we see with the AI ML and how we are progressing with that trend in each of our spaces.
Scalability, I would say. This is something that a lot of our team members have to face. Scalability, you start with what we call a proof of concept. Something works on your Jupyter notebook or on your maybe using a small portion of the infrastructure. And then, for example, in my own sector, munis, we are talking about 1 million bonds. So you make a prototype, you start, and then your solution, when it goes to prod, must be scalable. And it has to go almost seamlessly from 10,000 bonds to 1 million. It's non-trivial. And since the dawn of big data, scalability is, I think, one of the most important issues, and which is the main reason why people like me, quants like me, you must be at the same time a welder, a plumber, a mathematician, many different roles, many different hats to wear. So you must also be a technologist, because you need to interface with the pure technology and speak at the same level. So because the goal is definitely not trivial.
Any other examples?
Yeah, and I would definitely.
Go ahead, Amrutha.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just about to say, I completely agree on the scalability aspect of it. I know we have so many technologies out there today, SageMaker and a few others, but how are they really capable of handling the volumes of data and the variety of data that we will be working with for a lot of the AI ML models, right? Because a lot of the data science work that we do, at least 80% of it is data cleansing and prepping. So you're really kind of cleansing your data to force fit it into a model that you've created. So that's the work that you need to do, and and that's where I feel is the most challenging space and area. And outside of that, I would also talk about the semantics. For example, the data lineage, capturing metadata, having the right data quality and controls at the AI ML models, because you're using algorithms, and sometimes these are coming from open source systems and open source applications. So really keeping it authentic. How do you validate if your algorithms are right and more authentic? So I think these are some really complex and complicated issues that we're obviously iteratively maneuvering and managing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that confirmation bias plays a big role in that. I don't know if all of you read that article about Amazon in 2014 had the secret AI ML tool that would screen resumes for positions at Amazon. And in 2015, the following year, they disbanded it because they figured out very quickly that the AI ML learned to be gender biased. And it was quite funny because, the only examples they have, and like we talked about supervised learning before, is what has been traditionally done in the past. So that's what the algorithm picks up, and it picks up certain terms and words that you will often see in male resumes. So that article was very insightful in that. I definitely see that as a problem as well. Jeremy, you were about to say.
No, I find that an extremely interesting problem because, and to my overall point, I think most of these are not actually technology problems, but more the processes of how to inform and leverage them properly. So we as people are biased and generated that data that a lot of these models are trained off of. When we're talking about evaluating something for open source, how do we evaluate that risk and know how we want to introduce it? When we're talking about scale, we've talked about like all these new cloud offerings, compute's becoming easier. There's more and more novel ways of separating the disciplines and responsibilities within compute. Something we work on internally, a big effort right now, and I think we're seeing a lot of movement in the industry, is towards building kind of global data lakes are blowing up, building shared capabilities for groups to work across lines so that people can be aware of the data in different areas and not, introducing any bias. You have visibility into what each business unit is doing, and also building an environment that people can kind of play in a sandbox freely without harming a customer. So we're working on building out, how do we like an environment with data aggregated across the enterprise and utilities and frameworks to allow you to like play with TensorFlow or leverage whatever compute you want experiment with new deep learning algorithms, but not necessarily introducing that risk, right out into production just yet. So speaking to like how I started the conversation, I think doing that sort of work enables more people outside of just the core AI groups to work on these things. And that's very important. Just with anything, the more people you bring into the conversations, the more open minds you have, the more information that's available, and the less of a chance you have to introduce bias and ignore certain groups. So I think it's exciting to see the conversations evolve around ethics and processes as we now have all of these new capabilities dropped in our lap, but so many ways they can go wrong and right.
Yes.
Another important sorry, go ahead, please.
No, I just want to put a follow up here on what Jeremy mentioned on the ethics, because if when you go to finance area, so you're talking about giving or not giving money to people, and it's really how far you go with the machine learning and where you need the people to assess. And when you talk about insurance business, you think about a health business. So you can build a model with 98% capability of saying if the person will be very sick or not. So what do you do with that information? Because I mean, you're talking about the person health. So maybe you can bet, you want to bet on these 2%. Depending on in other business, you could approve this model and just do the machine to work. But when you go to finance and you are really messing with people's lives, so for me, it's really the big point for the future, how we manage and how we put together all the machine capability together with the humans supervising the information and the outputs.
Yes.
Yeah. An important area I want to highlight as we kind of point out the ethics of models and data use in models is really the regulation, which is also coming up, right? And I mean, it's well known that it's kind of hard sometimes to explain how the model made a decision, right? So there is definitely regulation being developed for what type of data we collect, to what is the life cycle of data you can keep. And I think, and also like even the models, right? In terms of, let's take insurance. Do you give insurance to a person or do you deny it? Like, what is the criteria used to deny it? Well, that's a very personal kind of an impact, right? So I think there is definitely regulation, which the governments are waking up, and particularly in Europe, there's a lot more awareness on this. And I think that is, something which the AI model developers would have to pay attention to. As a team, we would have to kind of pay attention to in terms of data lifecycle and how we are, managing that aspect. Right? So.
Yeah, I agree. And to bring it home, I think I'll say a lot of us have not traveled for over a year. Maybe some of you have and you were brave. But just imagine what happens if you do travel and you try to use your credit card abroad. What's going to happen? Your credit card company is going to say, oh, I see a fraudulent activity. You were not supposed to be traveling. I thought you were a sleepy customer. So that does play into that. The false positive plays into that. The ease of use plays into that. Yes, and we all talked about marketability as well. So, okay, so with that, I think we're at time. I think this was a great discussion. It's a fantastic opportunity, at least for me, to connect with all of you. I hope that we'll all stay connected over LinkedIn. And a big thank you to Data Standard for hosting this. Thank you.
Thank you.